The evacuation of rebels and their families is underway in the Syrian city of Aleppo amid claims of pro-Assad forces shooting at evacuees. Red Cross personnel on the ground and locals have denied those allegations.
What I can confirm from my side and from the information that I'm getting from our team on the ground is that they are safe. The operation itself is going well so far.
Britain's Prime Minister Theresa May defies calls to hold UK arms export to Saudi Arabia despite reports of mass civilian casualties in Riyadh's bombing campaign in Yemen. And the American media alleges Vladimir Putin was personally involved in hack attacks during the 2017 U.S. presidential campaign, citing unnamed intelligence sources. This is RT International coming to you live from Moscow. I'm tengah-tengah. Welcome to the program. Now, rebel fighters and their families in the eastern part of Aleppo are leaving the city. Their withdrawal was organized by both the Russian Reconciliation Center and Syria's government. Well, right now you can see some of the latest pictures from Aleppo showing the humanitarian corridor through which the evacuation is going. And more than 5,000 militants together with their family members are expected to be moved out of eastern Aleppo. But even before the evacuation started, activist groups, the White Helmets and the Syrian Observatory for Human Rights made claims that pro-Assad forces shot at evacuees. The evacuation is supported by the Red Cross and the Red Crescent, and we spoke to representatives of both organizations.
From the information that I'm getting from our team on the ground is that they are safe. The operation itself is going well so far. And people are starting to gather in order to get on the buses and the ambulances in order to be evacuated.
All what the media said, these are news and these are political. What I can speak about is the facts that the voluntary people are in the field, they are doing their job, and I think, I hope, everybody hopes, that they will face to do exactly what they have to do.
The claims that pro-Assad forces shot at evacuees have also been denied by locals in Aleppo. RT's Lisa Phelan is in the city for us following the situation on the ground.
Well, we've just seen the first buses presumably filled with some of Aleppo's last rebels leaving the city on the road east to the province of Idlib, which has already received thousands of militants who have surrendered in other parts of Syria, particularly from the province of Damascus. Some of them, we're told, will be heading yet further east across the border into Turkey. And this evacuation deal has been reached as a result of negotiations with the Russian Center for Reconciliation and the Syrian army, but it did take quite some time. There was a lot of stalling this morning for those buses to cross the frontier into opposition territory to evacuate people. Now, we're told that there's around 15,000 people due to be evacuated or remaining in that now no longer last rebel-held pocket of Aleppo. Of those 15,000, 4,000 are rebels, the families of rebels and civilians that didn't evacuate over the last few weeks. Now, the Syrian army has said that they guarantee the safe passage of these evacuees out of Aleppo. The process is being monitored by the Russian Center for Reconciliation. Nevertheless, there have been these allegations this morning of the Syrian army attacking civilians as they leave on those buses. But we've been speaking to locals and local journalists who have been here since the crack of dawn, and they say that those first buses entered into opposition territory to collect the evacuees long after these allegations emerged, and they say they heard no sound of gunfire or shooting in the area. And the source of most of these allegations that we've seen online picked up by the mainstream media is the White Helmets, or the Syrian civil defense, which is often cited in Western media's reporting on what's happening in rebel-held territory in Syria. But I wanted to find out more about who the White Helmets really are. So yesterday I spoke to many civilians who've just fled East Aleppo. Here's our story.
They have a curious array of endorsers, from the British Foreign Secretary.
They are fantastically brave these white helmets.
To the poster boy of the formerly named extremist group Jabhat al-Nusra.
I don't call them civil defensemen, but rather the mujahideen of the civil defense.
It appears that the Al-Qaeda affiliate's love for the white helmets isn't one way. They celebrate victories together. Still, in an interview with RT, one of its chiefs claims that they have saved tens of thousands of lives.
Not the problem about resource, about the result. We are until now, from 2013 until now, we were able to rescue 70,000 people.
Back in the Jibrin camp, brimming with people that have just fled White Helmet's turf, the organization has quite a reputation amongst the civilians that they're supposed to be saving. Everyone that we spoke to was angry and eager to talk.
Do you ever see in Fardous men with white helmets, they're called the white helmets or the civil defense, helping people when they were injured?
When they came to help the injured, they stole from them. If people were wearing jewelry, they cut it off. All of them are thieves.
Some of them are honest, but many are just thieves. They see gold and they take it.
The white helmets as sheep in wolves' clothing, thieves in disguise, was a common theme amongst the complaints. But the allegations got more serious. This man accused the organization of intentionally killing his little girl.
I took her to the civil defense hospital and they gave her an injection filled with air to kill her.
This man went as far as to celebrate an airstrike on his own house because he said it had been seized by White Helmets workers side by side with rebel fighters.
They forced me to leave my house and told me they were turning it into a Free Syrian Army base, but later they were hit by an airstrike.
Finally, we got to those glossy videos appearing to show their heroics, constantly repeated by the mainstream media.
They don't help people. They only work when there is a camera on them, and when the camera is gone, they leave. They abandon people under the rubble. They told us to pull the bodies out by ourselves.
Lizzie Phelan reporting for RT from Aleppo.
Despite the ongoing evacuation from eastern Aleppo, organized by both the Russian Reconciliation Center and the Syrian government, Western leaders are still blaming Assad and his supporters for all that's going on in the city. We asked Ken Livingston, a former mayor of London, about this.
I think the simple fact is we've had a sort of very strong anti-Russian agenda over the last few years. It's almost like going back to the Cold War. The simple fact is the West should have got behind once clearly Assad was not going to be overthrown, instead of continuing to prop up groups trying to replace him. The simple fact is, as well, this distortion that we're seeing. Our papers filled with all these accusations against Russia on this issue, but virtually nothing is mentioned of the horrific attacks that the Saudi regime is making in Yemen, with horrendous casualties of civilians there. That is barely mentioned. And as long as we continue with these double standards, it's almost like an echo of the Cold War coming back to haunt us.
Meanwhile, all humanitarian efforts are being downplayed by the mainstream media, which continues to blame President Assad and Russia for the civilian suffering in Aleppo. In the Now's Anissa Naoué takes a closer look.
Final messages are flying out of Aleppo, Syria. They're taking social media by storm simultaneously. It almost looks like a coordinated PR campaign.
No place now to go. It's the last place.
This may be my last video.
This might be close to, if not the last communication.
It's the last time that I talk to you.
It's almost as if they were hoping these final messages would trend and get picked up by mainstream media.
Bombs are everywhere. People are running. They don't know where, just running.
We are here living a genocide, literally.
People are executed. It's as simple as that.
It's almost like these are just innocent civilians with no message, no strategy, no politics, just people simply fighting for their lives. One day, saying goodbye to the world on social media, the next day giving interviews to BBC, CNN, and Al Jazeera, all in prime time. Well, they're not. These are activists. Some of them just recently joined Twitter and clearly support the revolution. They have thousands of followers. Some call themselves journalists and are verified on Facebook, like Bilal Abdul Karim, an American who has no problem pushing al-Nusra propaganda. You know, the rebels. So what do all of these people have in common? They want you to think there's one side to this story, one truth, that Assad is randomly going from city to city and killing his own people for some crazy reason with the help of Russia, even though the whole world is watching every step. They want you to think that these civilians pouring out of Aleppo are running from genocide committed by the Syrian army, and those who celebrate on the streets are dancing on children's graves, while al-Qaeda-infiltrated rebels are bravely and heroically defending civilians in East Aleppo. The question is, do you buy it? Because millions of people do.
While the Americans are having second thoughts, the UK insists it will carry on selling weapons to Saudi Arabia, fueling Riyadh's military campaign in Yemen. That's despite reports of airstrikes hitting hospitals and schools, causing mass civilian casualties, and despite calls from humanitarian organizations such as Amnesty International and Human Rights Watch. We'll have more on the story after a short break.